Takes time to build that. Michael from Clarksburg, West Virginia. You're on Singham 365 Radio on the BetUS caller line. Thanks for your call.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for taking my call. Enjoying your guys' show. I just recently started picking it up in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, and got to tell you, it's pretty impressive. You guys do a really nice job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
A couple things. First off, this Notre Dame stuff. Here's what's bad. The Notre Dame prostituted the Big East years ago by allowing them to play all their non-football games in the Big East. And the ACC has allowed them to do it again. And they've got this grant of rights until, 35? Mm-hmm. There's no way that Notre Dame's going to commit to the ACC with that current contract because they've got them by the kahunas where they don't have to. If they would have been able to force them to say, either you play all your sports in our league or none, and everybody else did the same thing, then Notre Dame would have had to join the conference. By you letting them exploit you, that just lets them stay independent. The second thing is that you take a look at West Virginia, and sure, I'm a homer for West Virginia, just like you guys are with Baylor. And I'm impressed by your basketball program. You look at the TV ratings from ESPN. The year that Geno Smith, we played you guys, the score was both in the 70s in that game. It's one of the highest rated games ever recorded on ESPN. And West Virginia's numbers, even though it's a small state, they've always drawled with Tavon Austin and all those guys, Rich Rod when he was there. They've always drawled the big numbers when it comes to viewers. And you guys hit it right on the nail. We don't want to go to the West Coast. Hell, to be honest with you, we really didn't want to play in the Big 12. But like you said, you got to go where somebody wants you. The ACC snubbed us, and they claimed education. But let's face it, Dean Smith and those guys, they didn't want to come into the Coliseum with our rowdy fans, and especially in the football stadium, because we can compete. Look at the last time we played Clemson. We hung up 70 on them. Now, is it the same Clemson as it is today? Hell no. I mean, Clemson's up there with Alabama. We know that. But I think we're on the right track with Neil Brown. We're having one of the best recruiting classes in football this year, maybe in the history of the school. And if you look at viewers, we're going to compete in football and basketball. We're good in both sports. And, What do you guys think about the situation?
Look, I think you kind of nailed it. Like West Virginia's only problem is that, people have a preconceived notion about what their state is or what their university is and the value there. But I mean, look, they're competitive in damn near everything, and I can't think of the last time that they were genuinely bad for a long stretch. They might have been bad for a minute. So again, they bring value in any conference, and I don't like. I kind of maybe agree with them about the ACC is that they already had Virginia Tech and Virginia, and they just felt like, and then they brought in Pittsburgh, but I don't know why they just didn't. It was a good fit for them.
Yeah, I mean they've just kind of been in the it's almost like they've been stuck in a washing machine, just like tumbling around. Like can't quite get to a full stop somewhere, always kind of searching for that spot to make sense. And as you said, yeah, like the Big 12 wasn't the ideal spot either. And you nailed that. I mean, they've always been kind of the outlier, right? As far as geography goes. I mean, Iowa State's kind of a little bit but I mean, like Oklahoma State, Kansas. I mean, they're all sort of that same vicinity. So West Virginia really is like the odd man out already. And now let's add another half of the country to that, and you'll really be the odd man out. So, yeah, I don't think West Virginia fans have any interest in that. But, again, like he said, and we said, if that's the option, that's the one you have to go with. I think, to me as just a college football fan, I think West Virginia is attractive. But these conference commissioners look at things in different ways. They're not looking at it as a passionate fan base or, the Geno Smith or, Tavon Austin or all the great teams. And I remember even going all the way back to Noel Devine, like back in the early 2000s when West Virginia really got on the radar, the Oklahoma Bowl game, and all that stuff. But I have an immense amount of respect for West Virginia, but there's clearly something there to where they have bounced around so much, and they're has been so many conferences that it's been like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but no thank you. Like, I mean, so what that is, I don't know, because it has to be something. Because they have a good-sized school. They do bring in, as you mentioned, like TV ratings on a fairly regular basis. We know they're amongst the most passionate fan bases, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of passionate fan bases out there. They're competitive in at least something every single year, if not pretty competitive in a lot of things any given year. So, yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is that's preventing, the ACC in the past or even now from wanting to welcome them in. I guess it must just go back to how much, like, you can have value, but do you add value to what you're joining? And I think that's where fans and media, we probably get ahead of ourselves a little bit, is that, like, yeah, you may have success and you may have TV ratings and you may have championships and you may have all these things like Baylor does or West Virginia or whatever. But if you go and you join the ACC, are you really bringing something to the table, or are you just watering it down? Now, you may say, well, there's no way we're watering it down because we've got a good football team, we've got a good basketball team. But that's not what we're talking about. Are the payouts less because you joined? If the payouts are less because you joined, then they probably don't want you, because the goal's not to make less money. Now, I've seen people put formulas out there of where, I think I've maybe even seen a West Virginia example of, like, where they would potentially add value, but I think that's what it ultimately comes down to.
I mean, they want to do what the SEC is doing right now.
Is it worth bringing in another school if everybody only makes $1 million more every year? Like, is it worth all that trouble to do it that way? I don't know. But I guarantee you this. If West Virginia could come into any conference and you could add $15 million to everybody's yearly buyout, they would be in a new dadgum conference right now.
Yeah.
And any other school, if there's any other school in the Big 12 that could immediately do that, they'd already have announced the new conference that they're in right now.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is like, it's all about value. And while you may have value as a brand, you have to add additional value. And I'm not sure that really any of these schools of the 8 do that for any of these other brands out there, quite honestly. I mean, that's why Oklahoma and Texas could make the move they made, because they add value, and they add a lot of value to the SEC, and that's why the SEC would not go out and grab a Baylor or a West Virginia. If they're going to go out and grab anybody else, they're grabbing, guess what, schools that can add value. So they're going to add USC, or they're going to add Oregon, or they're going to add, whoever else. So circling back, I maintain that I think West Virginia's best bet at the ACC is if Notre Dame capitulates. But based on everything I've read, including an article from about 10 days ago on ESPN that was really thorough on Notre Dame and the ACC, it listed all the reasons why it makes absolutely no sense for them to be anything but independent, and why they would never want to be anything but independent, because, as you pointed out, the ACC basically just said, hey, do whatever you want to do, use us, and then hopefully one day you'll actually love us. But Notre Dame's just like, no, we're going to keep it casual. We like the way it is now. We don't want to, like, fully commit. And that's basically what they've done. They're getting their cake and they're eating it too. And the ACC's like begging, let's make this official. And they don't want to do that because it's not in their best interest.
You can't be a major independent in basketball and volleyball. So they needed somebody.
They needed somebody.
Yeah, they needed somebody, and the ACC was all willing. But you can be in football. All right, let's go.
Shout out to the ears though. Neil Brown. I think he's going to do a really good job there.
Yeah. Mike, a Kansas State fan from Fort Collins. You're on the Bet US caller line. Thanks for your call.
Great show, guys. The one word that I have never heard is parity. I got sick every year. Well, let's just go on and give Oklahoma the crown, and the rest of us will fight for the scraps. I think that the teams that they're considering getting into the Big 12 will make it. I think will make it interesting year after year, and. I also believe that with a rabid fan base, our great facilities and whatnot, if the Big 12 breaks up, I quite frankly think that they would be a good fit for the Pac-12. We've already beaten USC and UCLA twice, and we lost to Oregon in a bowl game, but I think we can be, the Kansas State Wildcats could be very, very competitive in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and Mike, thanks for your phone call. I actually think, like, outside of Kansas, because we don't know how, like, when their program football will get resuscitated, every single school in the Big 12 has shown that they have potential to be good at times.
I think every one of them practically has been a top 10 rated team at some point or another.
Even Kansas
probably
with Todd Reesing, but it's
but I mean, in the last 20 years for sure, but in the last 10, I think pretty much all of them have been, a top 10 ranked football team or in a BCS game or a, CFB game or whatever. Or, CFP has only been Oklahoma, but we know Baylor knocked on that door a couple times and TCU did knock on that door once as well. But as far as the parity thing goes, I do think, and I think I said this a couple weeks ago when this all first started, the Big 12 actually has a really awesome opportunity here if they are able to move forward together as one. Like, worst case scenario, they stick it out and everybody lands in great spots and maybe they get a nice chunk of change, over the next few years to tide them over, and then they all go their separate ways. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens, but yeah, I mean, the Pac-12, again, value-wise, what does K-State bring to the Pac-12? I don't know that they bring all that much. And I say the same thing about the other Big 12 schools. I mean, outside of probably like Oklahoma State, I don't know that really I don't know that Texas Tech, big fan base, great. The western part of Texas, cool, but does it bring something? You know what I mean? Does it bring more than just a bunch of fans? Because, that's great, but it's ultimately not what matters. So, I think all the Big 12 schools could fit into the Pac-12 or could do well in the Pac-12. I just think the Pac-12's got their nose in the air and is not going to be really welcoming to any of the religious institutions. So sorry, Baylor and TCU, or maybe to just some of the Midwest constituents because, again, the value aspect of it. But going back to the parity thing, and this being an opportunity, yeah, depending on what they do, if they do add like a Cincinnati, a BYU, a UCF, and one other, and that's their dream scenario for a lot of fans out there, I think it would create a kind of an interesting league. And yeah, you're right, there would be parity. It wouldn't just be Oklahoma every single year winning the conference, which was part of the problem, was that they weren't challenged nearly enough. But it would be a much more diverse and interesting league, and so maybe that would attract some eyeballs, that there would maybe be a little bit more uncertainty as far as who the champ would be on a year-in, year-out basis. I certainly think those schools can hang. I mean, they're not that far away from hanging right now, and some of them are better than current Big 12 schools, quite frankly, in football. So that is definitely an option that I would think is on the table, and one that if they played their cards right and made the right selections and were freaking innovative for once and ahead of the ball for once, could actually kind of turn into a cool alternative league that's not just all the blue bloods gathered together. But they would have to have foresight and creativity and all of those things, and they have not displayed that they've had any of those marks really whatsoever. So it would take a changing of the brains of those in the Big 12, and we'll see if maybe these recent events have maybe flipped that switch in their heads. But I'm with you. I think the parity would be a nice refreshing change from just the dominance of one school at the top.
Well, and look, if you take out the two schools that threw water on any kind of innovation because they liked the way it was.
Yeah, that's true. They tried to be innovative. You're right. Yeah, I should take that back. And yeah, they have tried to do that. And yeah, they got shot down by the schools that were simultaneously planning their exits.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, Matt in D.C., then we break for Mickey Spagnola. Matt, you're on the Bet US caller line. Thanks for your call.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys. Man, this realignment thing, gets me going back to one of the callers who said, Notre Dame has to do it, has to fall in line. Notre Dame will never fall in line because they're Notre Dame. They have the biggest brand, I think, probably of all college football because it goes across the world. I mean, from Rome to Alaska, every Catholic is almost a Notre Dame fan. So you have that, billions of people that are your fans. So, and then if it goes to 12-team playoff, all Notre Dame would have to probably do is win 9 to 10 games, and they're in. Probably every year because they want the TV ratings. Right now, if they go 11-1, they're always going to get in. They're in. Even without the ACC. So they're not ever going to go. They'll keep the money. They'll keep getting a bigger contract. With West Virginia, man, I love West Virginia. I love Morgantown. I live with the people. My buddy down the street put a bar in his garage. It's amazing. The problem is with West Virginia, I think it's the smallest population of any state in the country, and I believe so. The school, I'll just say, it's a straight party school. The biggest major at that school is vodka Red Bull. It just is. I'm not talking bad about Morgantown. It's just that's what it is.
Right.
Okay, so that's why the ACC probably won't take them. I hope they stay with us, but for anyone wondering why no one wants to take West Virginia, I just don't think the fan base is that big, and they're just kind of stuck in that pocket. So I hope they stay with us. For our TV viewership, I think we just have to expand what we need. You know, grab the Cincinnati, Ohio's, grab 2 Florida schools. You know, Boise State. I saw article on Heartland College. I don't know if you ever read that about Colorado State possibly. If we can get to Denver, it's like the 7th biggest market. So just look at the TV viewership, look at the new markets, and if we can go into new markets, I mean, that's the thing we can do if we can stay together. I'll take it from here. Thanks.
All right, Matt, thanks for your call. We got to kind of break right now, but yeah, it's all.
I would say West Virginia fans, I've seen, you know, they'll tell you that they stretch into the DMV and they stretch into the VA and they stretch, you know, kind of wide out there outside. But yeah, you're right. No, that is a hindrance for them. And we have not mentioned, and it's funny because we're talking about a school and a university brand of football, right? And what's one thing we have not mentioned at all? Academics.
Yeah.
Academics. Imagine that comes into play in college. So I think that's a very good point. That you know that is another strength that I think a school like Baylor would have is their academics are pretty high, whereas some others who maybe aren't up to snuff in that regard, yeah, the Pac-12 probably doesn't want you. They probably don't. If you're going to drag down the academic side of things, or if you're going to lessen it, it's kind of like the money thing. Do you add value or do you lessen value? And if you're lessening value, like in the Pac-12, for example, where we know academics are always mentioned at the top of the list, then yeah, you're probably not that attractive of a candidate. So there are factors like that outside of TV ratings and money that absolutely do come into play, and I think you kind of hit it on the head there, Matt. So appreciate the phone call.
All right, Mickey Spagnola's next. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.